Good morning, everyone. We are now on air with all our participants. Good morning from the Florence School of Regulation, from Florence, but from many, many places I see here. So I'm already very happy to see all our participants online sending greetings from everywhere. Good. It sounds like the international environment we are after here at Florence School. Good morning. So we are ready to start this online debate. Sorry for the few minutes of delay. With our participants, with our speakers, Andris Piebalgs. I'm not sure how much of an introduction is needed to our speakers today, but Andris Piebalgs is now a senior fellow at the Florence School of Regulation, but he has been commissioner for many, many years, for 2 mandates, for Energy First and for Development in his second mandate. We have Walter Boltz, former vice chair of ACER, the European Agency for the Cooperation of Energy Regulators, and for a long time working for the Austrian regulator E-Control. And we have Stephan Kamphues, who is chair of the board of Open Grid Europe, a German gas TSO, and also president of ENTSO-G. And we will see which hat he will be wearing today, but it would be good to have a compromise between the two, let's say. Anyway, we invited our speakers for their great experience in the energy sector, and to discuss a topic which is very critical, has been very critical in the last few months. Actually, we can say that it's probably more critical during winter time, not so much in May, but we will see if the interest, your interest of the audience continues, and we may think of having another online debate or event closer to the winter, during the autumn. So, why this event? We had a really interesting conference here, organized by the Florence School at the European University Institute on 8th of April, and we had the pleasure of hosting many illustrious speakers, among which the 3 you see here today, and who kindly gave their availability to say also take again some extracts from that interesting conference, which unfortunately happened under Chatham House rules, so it was a quite restricted one. So we thought it would be good to have a sort of follow-up to that discussion and share it with as many participants as we can. So thank you for being here. Thank you to all the participants who are online. I will just remind you that our online debate today will be divided into, say, 2 main parts. During the first part, I will ask a few questions to our speakers. And we will listen to their opinion on these important questions, which are at the bulk of the external dimension topic. And then we will open the floor to you. So you are all very welcome to start typing your questions for the speakers, to engage actively in the debate already as of now. Then we will collect and select. Unfortunately, we have to select a few questions, probably the most relevant or the most interesting ones. And as you can see, there is already a tip from Florence School on where you should type your questions. I hope you all see this box underneath our faces. Okay, so I think I said everything which should be said. We can start actually from the results of a poll that was included in the registration link. So I hope all of you, or most of you, have participated. It was also a sort of provocative question, driven by the fact that we had to be very short in the space that we could use to ask this question and possible answers. What should be the primary focus of a European energy policy involving the external dimension? So in fact, what do you associate with the external dimension? And we received on a total 100% of answers. We can see that 57%, so the majority, thinks that having or speaking with a single European voice on European external energy policy is the most important thing. 34% suggest that we should not forget the climate change targets. And only 9% thinks that new gas pipelines should be one of the focuses, the main focus of an external energy policy. So I would start just by giving the floor to Andris Piebalgs and asking him to comment on these results, and then we will also hear the opinion of the other two speakers. Walter first and then Stephan. Andris, please, you have the floor.
Well, thank you, Ilaria. I believe the poll actually very well demonstrates how the tension towards external dimension is. The perception is that the EU is extremely weak and there are global or local or regional risks that involve security of supply. And I think bitter memories from particularly 2009 are still very deep in the minds of European citizens. And I believe there is a good things to look upon. One is still seeing that global energy markets are very much dominated by oil. And I was very much following the event in Doha about trying to limit the output of oil, because at the end of the day, security supply very much depends on the global market supply. So that means that there should be more flexible. If governments of producing countries start to decide how much output should be there, the risk is not only for oil, but also for all other commodities. And I was very much glad that the event ended without results. But there is at the same time interesting trend, because after the event, head of Rosneft, Igor Sechin said, OPEC is dead. That was one reading. And there was also a substantial change in Saudi Arabia because Minister Al-Naimi was sent retirement. So there is a big change, and I think we need very closely follow the global oil market. But at the same time, the news basically are good. And what we need to encourage is global gas markets evolve more and more strongly. The other aspect is speaking with one voice. And in my opinion, it's very good proposals that Commission made on the intergovernment agreement, transparency of this. It's not enormous step, but I think it's the first step in the right direction that we get Europe speaking in external dimension with one voice.
Okay, thank you very much, Andris. So you sort of endorse the results of this poll. It's probably not the only element. I mean, we know that it's very complex to come up with a let's say complete energy policy involving its external dimensions, and many other elements are comprised. But certainly, if we speak with one single European voice, this can only give strength to any European external energy policy. So what are the other elements then that we should not forget, Walter?
Well, I think the wish to speak with one voice is a good idea. I doubt that in the current European framework this will really happen anytime close. I think, as Andris has said, there are some areas where maybe in a few specific topics it's possible to coordinate better. It will remain a dream that is rather far away. But nonetheless, I think we do have an opportunity to strengthen the European buyers as a group compared to the producers in the global market. And I think here, one topic that's not listed, but maybe it's indirectly in the pipeline topic, I think the diversification is probably the best and easiest way of strengthening Europe and making sure that Europe is no longer perceived as only weak, but maybe a little bit stronger than before. And we have, especially in gas, I would say almost once in a lifetime opportunity that we have a very well supplied, actually oversupplied global gas market. And if we are able to make use of that, I think Europe could come out much stronger from the situation that we will very likely see over the next, let's say, 3 to 4 years, which is a glut of LNG, a lot of producers competing for access to the European market. And I think the challenge is really to make the best out of the opportunity that we currently have and focus on diversification, on building the internal market, basically making sure that gas from any entry point into the EU can compete with gas from any other entry point with as few hurdles and problems as possible. And if we're able to do that, I think it would probably push us ahead quite a bit and improve the standing and the influence that Europe can wield on the global gas market.
Okay, very good, thanks. So we heard speaking with one European voice and making efforts to achieve a common EU energy policy towards the external dimension is very important, but we need also concrete things. We need to take concrete steps, and I suppose, Stephan, you can only agree, but having the point of view of the TSOs now is like we paved the way for you. So, Stephan, please, we appreciate your comments.
Yes, of course. Looking at this poll, the 9% should be astonishing if we say new gas pipelines should only be the business for 9%. The rest things that climate change and the one voice issue are bigger. On the other hand, we are now at a time where most of the pipeline infrastructure has been built and only little is missing, in particular little compared to what has been already built. So I think the Southeast needs to be better connected and the interconnections need to be a little bit more flexible, and then it's already over because I don't believe that the gas demand will increase. So I think I'm really happy with the 9% because that is a pretty nice view. The 34% climate change, well, there is a lot of support for all the climate change questions. There's a lot of support from all sorts of involvement in Europe. So we have the people from the environmental side, from the economical side. We have those who are producing appliances. We have the COP21 and. So there's a lot around that. And so I can agree that the single voice is maybe one of the most important. On the other hand, the missing slice of this cake, it's a pie, not a cake. So okay, the missing slice from my point is the attractiveness of the market. That is what I'm missing a little bit. So the Europeans, as an external dimension, need to invite more producers and more traders to Europe in order to be 100% sure that everybody is there, competition takes place. And the larger this market and the deeper this market becomes, the more we can defend ourselves against the issues that we have seen. Andris mentioned 2009. I would, in addition, mention 2012, always depending on the region where you were. So that there should be more. So this last point, concerns me a little bit, that the market gets forgotten. This is not internal, not an internal question. The liquidity of the market, the factor of exchange is an external dimension, and this is why I would like to see it here in addition.
Okay. Very good point, because obviously good energy policy cannot act completely independently from the market. Actually, as we know, it's a position of the Commission that a well-functioning European internal market for energy is probably a precondition, or anyway one of the best tools to ensure already a good degree of security of supply. So maybe a follow-up question to the latest comments could be, to what extent do you think the internal energy market will deliver when we talk about security of supply? Is it enough? Do you think that in the future, and considering all the possible developments of technology, on which of course we can only try to make a prediction, but do you think that it might be enough to have a really well-functioning internal energy market, so that we become more and more resilient, for example, from external imports? Andris, or are there too many factors to be kept under control?
Well, I would agree that a well-functioning internal gas market is definitely one of the main preconditions for security of supply. But still, Europe very much depends on pipelines. And I will just give one example. There is a lot of debate about Nord Stream 2, and at the same time there are still unsolved issues between Russia and Ukraine about gas transit via Ukraine. The current agreement expires 2019 between Ukraine and Russia on transit. The Nord Stream 2, I am not speaking about all the controversies, but even if to take them away, would come in on 2019. So it's nothing to do with internal market so much. It is more really, I would say, geopolitics, because at the end of the day, geopolitical factors are very, very important. If I see also parallel with previous case, we have seen geopolitical reasons why actually security of supply and gas have been disrupted. So I believe that it's very crucial for the EU to get in external policy clear understanding and initiative to say what you would like and what you would not like, because if different member countries give different signals to our supplier, so at the end of the day there is confusion, and if there is a confusion, then there could be a crisis. So I believe that geopolitics are still crucially important in energy sector, and it will stay for quite substantial time.
Okay. Walter, would you like to comment on this?
I mean, I think we have seen that there is still quite a bit of political influence on especially the gas supply chain. And I think the internal market will not remove this political influence and interests. I do believe, though, that the possibility to disrupt flows, the likelihood that it will happen, will be declining if we have a well-functioning internal energy market. So I think we have two pillars. One is really to work on integrating the European gas market and make it possible to supply every European customer from a number of entry points into the EU with not too many additional costs. And at the same time, I think we should work on measures that might limit potential political influences, and that has to do with, stabilizing transit regions like Ukraine or also in the Balkans. Might include a better coordination of security of supply relevant measures, planning and measures on a national level, because not many EU countries could assure security of supply just on their own. So most are really dependent on a number of other EU members to be able to continuously assure security of supply. So that should be reflected also in their planning, in their emergency plans, in their day-to-day politics. So I think internal market will do, 70% or 60% of the necessary changes, and the rest, I think, has to be political coordination, better agreements, and more intensive cooperation between member states.
Good. And how can we encourage then the market to work properly, Stephan? So apparently the need for new gas pipelines, it's something that should be decided, should be left to the market, should be left to the initiative of the market, or can regulation and policy should regulation and European energy policy interfere somehow on this, and how?
There is a huge difference between electricity and gas. When we talk about electricity, you are dealing with your neighbors, not your own country, your own regions, but your neighbors. Gas and oil is a global market, and you are depending not on your neighbors only, but about your neighbor's neighbor. And therefore, this needs to be dealt with a little bit more carefully than the electricity side. If you look at Bulgaria, for example, they are connected via the Trans-Balkan pipeline to Ukraine, but on the other hand, even if there would be a market that functions, it would still be necessary to improve the security of supply by being connected with your neighbors and making sure that your neighbors are connected furthermore. So for me, it is clear that Bulgaria would need a good connection to the south in order to attract now gas from the Caspian area, but also LNG. And this is why I do not believe that the market alone can do it. The market would be satisfied if there's just enough, but for a security of supply and independence reasons, it's better to have the necessary pipeline connections in place and to make sure that they also lead to a source that is independent from your other sources. This is why I believe that some regulation there is needed, and in particular, countries need to have other strong companies that are interested in diversification, or you have to do it via the regulation and incentivize the companies to connect you to the markets. We will see now what Walter called an LNG glut. I think that we'll see a lot of LNG from the US, but also from Qatar, from Angola, from the Mediterranean, from all the places coming to Europe. But we must not forget that this can be over after a time, always depending on the gas prices on the global market, and depending very much also on the economic growth of Southeast Asia and China. Therefore, I would still say that the necessary missing connections need to be done, and we should not be afraid of too much, and we should not be afraid of redundancy. So in particular, the southeast of Europe needs some more connection and interconnection to make sure that you are completely independent and apart from any market question, are able to receive the gas. And the rest is then done by the market. Here I see one missing point. We find a nice forward market in the Netherlands. We find nice financial instruments in the UK. And we find liquidity in other places, but we are still missing a place where you could say everything that is needed by the market participants, like hedging possibilities, other financial services, liquidity and access. That there should be a stronger market still comparable to maybe the addition of TTF and NBP, or compared to the Henry Hub. That is the only thing on the market side, I think, that is missing.
Good, very good. Andris, I saw you were nodding while Stephan was commenting.
I very much agree, because energy markets are inside the EU very much separated historically and by a lot of reasons. I remember when I started as energy commissioner, my particular worry was Baltic region. And there have been practically no interconnections and no interconnection envisaged. So what we proposed was a Baltic interconnection plan by the Commission and some seed money. And then the interconnections that we hardly saw possible to come on stream, like a connection between Poland and Lithuania, Sweden and Lithuania, another connection with Estonia, Finland. Only then they came on stream. So it has been not so much interest from market really to deal with this infrastructure because politically sensitive. And now on gas, I'm very glad that Commission provides some money for MidCat pipeline, Well, it's a bit bizarre because MidCat is between Spain and France, if I'm correct, and both are rich countries and very strong companies. Why we need to put taxpayers' money in? But without this, there have been no real development. So I believe that's very crucial point, that market needs to be strengthened by well-judged political decisions and sometimes involvement also of some taxpayers' money, because otherwise just the flow is not there.
And Walter, I suppose that the money flowing from consumers is certainly one of the biggest concerns, especially if you work for a regulator and you have to guarantee consumers' protection and make sure that only the right investments are authorized. Would you like to comment on this from based on your experience as a regulator?
Yes, I think we are at a transition period. In the past, most pipeline investments were based on market signals and on the willingness of market participants to basically bear the risk of utilization, and the same applied to most, not all, but to most LNG terminals. I think, as Stephan has pointed out, we are in a period where overall we don't need a lot additional pipelines because the gas market is not going to grow a lot. But we still want to have a better interconnected gas market in Europe. And that means we will have to socialize a larger share of the future gas pipeline investment and maybe also some LNG regas investment to make sure that the security of supply goals are also met. And they are much more difficult to justify on a purely commercial basis. If you have interruptions only every 30 years, a company would normally not invest in avoiding this interruption because in 30 years, all the shareholders will have changed once or twice. And so they don't care what happens in 30 years. So I think we are in Europe going to see the need for having a system where some of the interconnection pipelines that are built not for bringing additional gas into Europe, but providing additional routes and additional connections will need to be socialized. If this is through EU subsidies, like on a couple of pipeline projects in the infrastructure project, or if this is a change in the tariffication system, a move towards the tariffication system a little bit more close to electricity, where basically the end users pay for almost all of the electricity grid and not the trader who uses the electricity grid. I think that's still open, it's still being debated, but I think we will move towards a more socialized infrastructure development, and utilizing the infrastructure will be in the public interest and not only or selectively in the interest of individual shippers.
All right, very good. Interesting, this transition to the role of the market in this transition is very interesting. There's even who affirms that security of supply cannot be market-based at all. It's a clear statement. So I would like
exclusively.
Not exclusively market-based, yes. Yeah. So I would like to know actually what our audience thinks about this and the other open questions that we debated so far. So I think it's now time to open the floor to the audience for questions. So I invite you to type in the box I pointed to you earlier at. Some questions have actually already arrived, and I could see also a couple of questions. Thank you very much to my colleagues here for help on the graphic part. Now it's much better. Yes, starting from exactly the result of our poll. We saw that speaking with one European voice is one of the most important concerns, and you also confirmed this with the with the right yes, but. We have a question, should the EU think about a new governance mechanism in order to establish more trust between the states in delivering responsibilities in case of supply crisis? So this is a question which deals very much with the new concept of solidarity, which we saw also included in the winter package in the winter package published by the Commission in February this year. How to favor solidarity between member states so that, in fact, there is the one single European voice can be really a true one based on stronger basis. Who would like to take this question? I would start otherwise from Andris, perhaps, or yep.
Okay. Well, I think Commission made a proposal. I believe it's not extremely ambitious proposal, but it goes a step further because it takes all the regional approach, it builds trust, and it keeps mechanisms that are well known to member countries. Because one thing we should always not forget, we should not decouple politics, and today trust relationships between governments are not at the best in the European Union, and energy. So I think perhaps on energy we could have done more because there is definitely by far more trust in energy than in some other areas. But still I believe that Commission's proposal for security of supply and governance mechanism is sound and it should be endorsed because it's definitely a big step forward.
Okay, thank you very much. Walter?
I mean, I think the Commission could actually go a little bit further. Don't forget, if, let's say, 4 countries that are sort of at the beginning of the transit flows would cease to be active in solidarity, most of the gas imports into Europe. So I think many or most European countries are fully dependent on the solidarity of the upstream EU countries. And although this is not really widely discussed, I think it could be the basis for some stronger solidarity mechanism. I think what is important is to make sure that we have a very clear, very efficient legal basis, because if there is a crisis of whatever nature, obviously national governments come under huge pressure to take unilateral actions, and we have seen many negative examples in the refugee crisis of the last couple of months or year. And on the gas side, I think it would not be much different. So I think now, when we don't have a crisis, when we have a very relaxed supply situation, is probably the best time to focus on establishing a very clear, very easily enforceable set of rules that have to be applied by member states in case of disruptions. Because otherwise, once there are problems, it will be much more difficult to do so. And we could see a repetition of what we see in the refugee crisis. Basically, I don't know, looking back, Slovakia could, and the rest of Europe could get lost. Or Germany could say, we keep all the gas from the 2 Nord Stream pipelines and you worry about the rest. So if you think about that, it becomes obvious that a much higher degree of solidarity is needed and a strong legal basis that is still workable even if there are disruptions and even if there are national governments under very serious pressure from their local constituency.
All right. So yes, we heard. So Stephan, yes, solidarity, but we need to make sure that it's supported by some concrete steps. So we are again looking towards the internal borders of Europe right now. What do you think? Is it achievable? Is it something that can be achieved with in concrete terms? Solidarity between states in case of emergency.
Well, this is really a case where I believe it can be achieved. First, I do not mention now 2 things that should be discussed. One thing I don't mention is that first we have to talk about the neighborship of a more market-based and a more state-oriented gas regulation. So open market versus regulated commodity prices. I don't talk about that now, but that is something that is complicated and that needs to be discussed. Second, I also don't talk now about the question, should there be more subsidiarity or solidarity? Should not everybody be as first obliged to do more in his own country or in the neighboring country in order to increase the security of supply? I don't discuss that. I go just directly to the paper of the Commission. Okay. We had Donald Tusk's 6-pager European Union or Energy Union. Then we had the Šefčovič paper, and now we have the amendment to the security of supply. And they all have one thing underestimated, and I think that is what is a region? A region that is under the pressure of a missing Russian supply route is a different one from missing Russian supply in general. 2012 it was not enough. 2009 it was only a certain route. We have underestimated the question, what is this region? I would like to remind everybody on the general strike in the North Sea several years ago. Everybody has forgotten that, but there was a strike on the North Sea platforms and we had no supply from the north. Then we have the situation around earthquakes in the Netherlands, that is an Elgas area. If that would be missing, it would be a totally different region that would be affected. It would be France, Netherlands, Belgium, and Germany. So that would suddenly be the region, and this is why I have made some additional proposals concerning these regions. Regions should not be a fixed concept. It should be a concept based on scenarios. Is it a Russian scenario? Is it a northern scenario? Or is it again an Italian scenario where we have seen that if somebody damages the pipelines coming from Algeria, suddenly the Italians are in trouble and we have a totally different setup. So number one, the regions should be flexible. Number two, what we then need is not a region, then we need corridors between regions. Because if we have a problem in the east, I need somebody to bring along gas from the west, from the LNG ports. And so we should base our second thought then on corridors rather than on regions. Because it's not a regional issue, it's a European issue. And it was all the time the case that we sought the internal market for Europe and not a regional market. I think that should be added by a corridor concept and by flexible regions. So I've made these proposals and I hope that they are picked up. And ENTSO-G has developed concepts. First, we called it the early warning system. So somebody who sees that we are getting into trouble informs the others and immediately measures are taken. Then we have gone one step further and we have now developed the regional coordination centers, one for the Northwest and another one for the East, that allows us to immediately react jointly with the colleagues in Europe to a crisis situation. But the solution, in case a Russian route would be out of order, the solution will not be found in Eastern Europe. It will be found somewhere else, and then somebody has to transport for the purpose of helping the others gas. So that is then the solidarity, but it must be based on flexible answers, corridors, and European and not regional solutions.
Okay, very good. Talking about the concrete steps. I think I will take a question which just arrived because I think it's relevant to what you just said, Stephan. It actually elaborates on that, but it's a question for the three of you. Should there be dry run of a virtual case of a crisis to see if the current solidarity proposals are enough? This would be similar to dry run contemplated around incremental capacities proposals. What's your opinion on that? Walter, would you like to start?
Yeah, I can start. I mean, the security of supply regulation even now calls for regional plans, but they're not yet mandatory. I personally think that these kind of dry runs are very useful because they show the actual problems and they also show the limits of coordination and the limits of solidarity, and then they can be used as a basis for developing further legislative measures. So I would encourage that, and I think it's probably something that could or should be initiated by the Commission, and then run a case as realistic as possible, and with at least a certain general transparency. I mean, you might not want to have all that published, but a certain level of transparency, because it will then influence the policy process and will make clear very quickly that everybody is, or at least 90% of the EU member states are much better off if the solidarity works than if it doesn't work.
All right, thanks. Anybody else wants to answer this question?
Yeah, we have on the ENTSO-G side, we have on the ENTSO-G side, we have done the summer-winter outlooks, the 10-year network development plan, and always analyzed scenarios, but even more in the case of the stress tests. And we are continuing that work. And I believe that we can only build a European security of supply system based on scenarios and dry runs. And more, not only dry run, but then also concluding the contractual relationships or agreements that would be necessary to implement that for each and every scenario that would be large and important. We have tested that we always find it difficult to manage north-south problems in case of a lack of Russian gas. Meanwhile, we have concluded with all the neighboring TSOs swap agreements for the north-south directions. And you can shift gas flows from north to south, from Eastern Europe to Middle Europe, and even to Western Europe and back. This is nowadays all based on agreements. But it was the result of scenarios that came up, were then suddenly experienced, and then turned into obligations and rules. This should be done for all possible major scenarios, and then also the necessary steps should be put on into emergency plans, and they should also be contractually agreed, so that you just push the button and then the whole thing runs. You don't need to highlight every scenario, but the major ones, maybe Eastern scenario, Northern scenario, Southern scenario, because these are the most important cases. And please don't think about that too regional. The region will not solve the problem. Yeah, because if there is a problem in Eastern Europe, the whole region has the problem, and we have to organize gas flows then from the north and from the west into the eastern direction. So it's really, from my point of view, not so much a regional issue, it's more a European issue, but who is affected and who can help and contribute is always a function of these scenarios, and therefore I very much welcome the job of ENTSO-G to test these scenarios and have to have these dry runs in place in order then to have also tested solutions.
Okay, very good. Yes, good point. So focusing on concrete steps and concrete tests as well, it's probably a good way forward to perceive. Andris, do you want to comment? Otherwise, I have another question for you already.
Let's go to another, because I agree on these dry tests, but how to pay for it, I think Walter is by far better placed than me.
Okay, so for you, I think, well, there is probably the question, which arrived indeed as the first question from our audience. Is there a tension between member states' domestic interests and European interests? If yes, what are the interests at stake? And are these interests able to halt cooperation?
Well, I think on security of supply, there is a tension, but I don't see it is so controversial, so difficult to manage. There is some mistrust, in particular this Nord Stream 2 pipe, then there is also a bit of mistrust about South Stream, but it's more geopolitically oriented, and I believe it's doable if there is enough political will. Where I see the tensions perhaps becoming stronger in the years to come, it's on this climate change side, because already now member countries start to make a bit of positions that I can't do this, I could not so much develop renewables, I could not. That I see more challenging, because at the end of the day, we need to very steeply decline CO2 emissions. And I would describe on this part there will be more challenge, but how much will affect the security of supply, I would say it's still secondary. So in my opinion, in energy sector, there is good chance really to get agreement on major issues. I remember, just to give one example, the unbundling issue. I remember Austrian minister was very much in detail, but at the end of the day, there was agreement. There was big controversy at that time. Today, unbundling is accepted everywhere, and it's mainstream. So I believe in energy there is this trust provided, and mistrust is that, well, towards Russia, for example, we have different policies, but perception, but still, I think it's doable.
Okay, and Walter, if you would like to give us your opinion on the same question. I think this question was actually more addressing you, in fact, because of your previous position as a regulator.
Well, I didn't catch.
Well, basically,
Yeah,
the big tension between domestic interest of member states and European one, with the Andris put on the table an additional interesting point that renewables targets may create more food for thoughts, but also more problems probably going forward in this tension. What do you think? Is the tension real? Is it or is it like an excuse? What's your experience?
I mean, maybe on the first part, I think there are sometimes quite significant different views between the EU and member states. Some of the arguments are a little bit short-sighted, like, I want the pipeline in my country, irrespective if it, serves the purpose of improving security of supply a lot or not. I think from a more top-down perspective, there is not a huge different position and different interest between the EU and member states. I think we are jointly interested in having a secure supply of gas into Europe. And we might have different views if it's more advisable to build some more LNG regas terminals or some more pipelines. But I think the goal is pretty much shared among the member states. The instruments, the measures are here. A compromise should be possible. I think, as Andris has mentioned, this issue of climate change is a more fundamental point, because one line of argument that we hear, not all that much, but we do hear it sometimes, well, the best way to improve security of supply of gas is to not use gas. Because if we all produce our electricity from renewables and also all the other energy sources, we don't need gas, and then we don't have to worry about where we get it from. Now, obviously, this is a long-range perspective, and if in 2050 there might be not a lot of gas used in Europe anymore, or there might be, this is almost too far out to guide our today's policy. But there are different views among member states, and we see them just in the way they approach renewable support systems with buckets full of money or with just a little bit money. So I think probably there's a role for the Commission to steer the debate a little bit into short and medium-term measures, where obviously in the short and medium term we will have gas, and there's no scenario possible that we will be able to survive without any fossil fuels over the next 20 to 25 years. Now, if in 50 years we still need fossil fuels in Europe, who knows? Yeah. But I think this is a difficult debate, and it will not easily go away because there are very, let's say, fundamental, let's say, almost fundamentalistic views associated with it.
Absolutely. This is one of the big questions nowadays. As if you remember at the conference of the 8th of April, I quoted a press statement by Eurogas, which had just been published and which was highlighting how after 4 years, I believe in a row, gas consumption in Europe had restarted having a positive trend. So, and the Commission, on the other hand, is focusing very much on gas policy. So, Stephan, it seems like we will need gas for at least in the short medium term. Actually, to you, I could probably address a few questions arrived on infrastructures. We have the importance of Southwest Europe, if it plays a relevant role to reduce the dependency of Russia, and probably jointly with it, the fact that today the inauguration ceremony of the TAP pipeline is taking place in Greece, and do you believe Southern Gas Corridor is on good track? So it's a regional question, regional focused question for you, Stephan.
Yeah, and again, I would say it's not only regional, but first, nobody should think about or too much about fossil fuel. It's not the question whether it's fossil fuel or not. It's a question whether we have emissions or not, and because that is the issue that we have to talk about. And as long as you burn it in fuel cells, or not burn it, but use it in fuel cells or other non-emitting appliances, you have a totally different role of the gas wherever it comes from. Well, I'm really concerned about the development in the south, particularly the southeast. Inauguration of TAP means that now suddenly Italy is even better supplied. But Italy was already very well supplied. They were connected to the south, to the north, and they have 3 LNG ports all empty. So I don't think that Italy, with a 65 billion market, really needs help. No? So I congratulate TANAP and TAP on their perfect work. That is really good. But on the other hand, it doesn't help the south.
So it is a good track, in a way.
No, that
for them,
at
least.
But in the beginning, we had, let's say, back in the 90s, everybody was sure that we would see gas from Iran. And I still think that is one of the things that we need. Caspian gas, Iranian gas, gas from Iraq, from Kurdistan. There are so many potential sources, not to talk about the Mediterranean area where the Egyptians and the Israelis have enough gas that can be exported to the north. But the pipeline connections are still not as they should be. And the southern track is okay, it's doing well, but we need something that is similar to what has been planned by Nabucco or South Stream. Because from my personal perspective, I welcome every pipeline leading into Europe, in particular when paid for and invested by the suppliers and producers. But we were all 100% sure that we would need something in Southeast Europe. Energy community and also European member states. And now the TAP system goes into the direction Italy, but there is no trunk line to the north. And I would see it as absolutely necessary that we have a better security of supply in the southeast, because of course we can do a lot from the north, but in case of an emergency, of a crisis, or in the case of too high gas prices, it's better to have many connections. And even if they are competing with each other, it's better. And I was always regretting that the interconnection between the southeastern European countries were not good enough, and the external supply was not good enough. And not always LNG is the answer. So I would welcome a pipeline that could be Turk Stream, South Stream, Nabucco, that could be a trunk line coming from the TANAP system into Bulgaria. But we need also to think about that in a more than regional solution. So we need to fill it up from the north and from the south. And this is why I would say, yes, it's good to see the TANAP and TAP development, but that's not enough. That is really not enough. We need a better interconnection of Romania, Bulgaria, Hungary, Macedonia, Serbia, and so on and so forth, and a supply scenario that helps them with gas from the south.
Okay, excellent. Well, I'm afraid that time is now almost over. So unfortunately, we had more very interesting questions. I apologize that we didn't have time to take them. Interesting questions regarding also more conceptual approach to external strategy and IGAs. But I'm afraid that if we take them now, the discussion will take another 20-25 minutes. So maybe we can leave it for another occasion, for another online debate. So I have one suggestion from my colleagues here. In the chat, there is the link to subscribe to the newsletter. So if you, this is an invitation to our audience to subscribe to our newsletter, through which you will always be kept up to date on our activities. And of course, we are always open to evaluate suggestions for new topics anytime there is a new interest. As you can see, we can rely on very good friends and well-knowledged and experienced speakers that I would like to thank, actually, for their participation. Thank you very much to Andris Piebalgs, Walter Boltz, and Stephan Kamphues for sharing your experience and your opinion on this important topic. And as I said, there might be a follow-up because apparently the topic is everything but closed. So I'm sure we will come back on many issues, also thanks to inputs from the Commission and in the course of the next months. Okay, well, thank you very much to everyone, also the ones who bravely stayed online, to all our participants, and that's it. Have a nice summer.
Thank you, Ilaria. Thank you, colleagues.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.